Good afternoon to all the participants, and thank you so much for joining us for today's workshop here at the Research Capacity Development Unit, Postgraduate School, University of Johannesburg. May you please indicate with a thumbs up if you can all hear me? Please kindly indicate with a thumbs up if you can all hear me before we can proceed. Okay, perfect. So my name is Lawrence Asani, and I am delighted to be your moderator for today's workshop. And welcome to today's workshop on organizing and interpreting finding in social sciences. As we all know, this is one of the biggest challenges of researchers to, actually make sense of our, findings. The most significant challenge is to actually collecting the data, but also another challenge comes when we now have to turn raw data into meaningful insights, organizing findings for clarity, and just to make our findings be coherent and, to make sense. So in today's workshop, we'll be, strengthening, the research impact in social sciences, and also just to, understand how we can also turn this raw data into meaningful insights. So before I introduce Dr. Gabriel to you, or before we can proceed, please allow me to go over a few housekeeping rules. If you do have any questions if you do have any questions during the session, please kindly raise your hand and I will indicate to our presenter to address your questions. And please kindly note this session is being recorded, as well as this session is being recorded and our presentation slides will be posted on our model communities together with the presentation slides. I will be posting a feedback survey in the chat session, so please kindly fill this in as we'll also use this for our reporting purposes and to also give this to our facilitators. And we also use this feedback survey to generate a certificate of attendance. So we please kindly ask you to fill it in with all your correct details, which is your name, your surname, your student number, and your email address. So please ensure that you fill this in with your correct details. And also, please kindly note that we have also launched what we call the Research Capacity Development Management System, which is the RCDMS, which is accessible under ULink under Services tab. So this system has been launched to streamline your research journey. Basically, we are trying to move away from rather than using the teams relative to the system. So we are going to be hosting our sessions onto that platform, as well as our writing consultation or any other workshop resources that you might need going forward. So in that regard, please kindly allow me to read over Dr. Gabriel Monera's bio, who will be our facilitator for today's workshop. So Dr. Gabriel Monera holds a PhD in Economic and Management Sciences with International Trade from the Northwest University and is currently enrolled in the postgraduate diploma in research supervision at the University of Johannesburg. With over a decade of teaching experience and a strong publication record, he has authored and co-authored book chapters. He, excuse me for that. He has authored and co-authored book chapters in a number of articles in top-tier accredited and peer-reviewed journals. He actively reviews for reputable journals and has received multiple awards for academic excellency. Dr. Monera completed his postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Johannesburg and currently serves as the research capacity development specialist here at the postgraduate school, supporting postgraduate students, researchers in academic writing and publication. His research interests include trade policy, export promotion, globalization, foreign direct investment, regional integration in Africa, market accessibility measurements, and 4IR trade-related research. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Gabriel. Dr. Gabriel, you may now proceed. Thank you so much.
Lawrence, thank you so much for the introduction. Sorry, I forgot that it's me who was sharing the video from this side. So I just closed it in preparation to share my slides with the participants. My apology for that.
No, not
Uh,
a problem. Not a problem,
okay,
Doctor.
all right. Thank you so much. Let me let me just get an indication from the participants that they can hear me. And also when you can see these slides that I'm going to share with you, I would like also to get an indication that you can actually see them. So just an indication from the participants, if they can hear me well and see the slides. I'm in the process of sharing the slides. I would just want a confirmation, once I'm done, that you can in fact hear me, and you can also see these slides that I've shared with you. Let me just see. Okay, now let me share the screen with you. Okay, I've shared. Indicate if you can see it, and also if you can hear me well.
Yes, perfectly, Doc. We can see your screen. You can now proceed. Yes, and it's in presenter mode. Yeah, perfect.
Thank you so much. Let me just begin by also thanking the participants who have took their time to come and listen to me, where I'm presenting on this important topic of organizing and interpreting findings in the social science. Like my colleague Lawrence have said, in many cases, collecting the data, it's not an issue. We do collect the data well, but what to say after you've collected the data, sometimes it becomes more of an issue. So this is so what sort of hinges the importance of this conversation that we are going to have today, as relating to social sciences. I'm from social sciences as well. I think if you heard from when my bios was being read, I hold a PhD in economic and management sciences. So I'm really sort of an appropriate person to be talking, on this platform about social sciences. This aspect of research, this aspect of our studies that we are doing. The results aspect is relating to the social science, or contextualized within the social science space. So this is the outline of the presentation. I will look at the significance of structure. Why is it important that we even have to structure the results themselves? Let's just talk about the entire research itself. Why is it even important that we structure it? So we'll learn that this structure itself, that is the sort of the broader form of coherence. That's the broader form of logical flow or logical progression of the work that you do. You, as a person yourself, why are you organized in the manner that you are organized? When we look at you, we do not see your hands being where the head is supposed to be, and your head being where the feet is supposed to be. You are arranged in a logical manner. That's coherence. It's where does that coherence come from? It comes from the skeleton that you are having, the skeletal system, because that is the one that is containing flesh, where all the bones are placed in the perfect positions where they are supposed to be placed. So it's important that everything, the issue of structure is just there, and not only in research but even in our life in general. Structure, everything just to follow some kind of logical organization. It follows some kind of sequence. So we are living with these aspects in our everyday life. And so that is also linked to the research that we do, to the studies that we do. So I'll look at the generic structure, where I'm trying to come from a broader context where we talk about structure broadly, then also even introduce the generic structure that we normally follow. If when we are writing, which is a structure that is also followed even when you are writing articles, only that articles are all more of a sort of a summarized form of maybe a full thesis, dissertation, a research report, and the likes. But specifically, what we want to focus on today is structuring the results. So I will introduce the generic structure, including all the components that are associated with it, then move on to the structuring the results, which is the core or the essence of the presentation that we are gathering for today. Then I've included another aspect that goes with results, right? Structuring the discussion. Okay. For some of you who have published before, you notice that many many journals, they don't really bother if you do not include a discussion section. You just include both the discussion and the presentation of results in one section. But when you are writing, maybe for other journals, they might ask you to separate that. When we are writing in the context of the studies that we do as postgraduate students, we have to mostly, it's rare for you to see, results being presented and discussed in one chapter. There is usually a discussion chapter and results chapter. But what do you do within those chapters? So it's actually very important that we know the distinction of these two seemingly very related aspects, of your study. But so it's important that we understand, what do you do within the results section and what do you do within the discussion section. Some they replicate, they present the results, they go and present them again in the discussion, or they present and discuss them. Then when they go to the discussion, they have nothing to say anymore. They replicate the same things that they have been saying before. But it comes from lack of knowledge of how to navigate between these two very important and related elements. Then I will talk about the presentation of results versus discussion, then offer some strategic guidelines, and then I will present my concluding remarks for this session. Then some references that you can follow if you need to consult some of the sources that I consulted for this presentation. Then we'll open the floor for questions. I call it an open discussion, but if you feel that you need to ask me a question along the way, then you are also free to do so. Just raise your virtual hand, then Mr. Asani will unmute your mic, and then we can engage. Otherwise, you can just wait for the open discussion segment where we can ask questions, share experiences, also contribute to this discussion that we are going to have in this session. I would want to start by looking at the significance of structure. So within this section, I would define what structure is. So this is just a dictionary definition, Oxford Dictionary to be more specific. Where this is defined in the context of being a noun, and as well as in the context of being a verb. And when we talk about when we define structure in the context of a noun, we are defining it as the arrangement of and the relations between the parts or elements of something complex. And I think we would all agree that results are something that is that is complex. So it's a building, also defined as a building or other object constructed from several parts. Right. So I just want you to notice the relations between. I'm talking about an arrangement, of and relations between parts or elements of something complex. Right. And then I'm also talking now about a building or other object constructed from several parts. So which means you are putting them in a particular sequence. Let's say you're building a house. You don't just put bricks anywhere. There's a sequence that you have to follow, for that building to be a proper building. I don't think you put bricks right on top of each other, like in a line. Obviously that will collapse, but there's a way in which the bricks are put overlapping on each other or overlaying each other. Then as a verb, it's construct or arrange according to a plan, give a pattern or organization to something, isn't it? So I think from these two definitions, we can all agree that there's an issue of relations, there's an issue of different elements that you have to put together, that you have to organize, that you have to construct, that you have to arrange, according to a plan. So which shows that even this issue of presentation of results, organization of results, it's something that you actually have to plan for. It doesn't just happen. It's not an event that just happened and then is concluded. It's something that you, as the researcher, you have to plan for, right? Why is the correct structure important? So they are, like I've said already, I've introduced the issue of logical flow, coherence. It's linked to clarity, the flow of the information, the logical progression of text, coherence. And I've even used an example of the skeletal system and said yourself, as a person, you are arranged, you are organized in a particular manner. You understand? A manner that is coherent. Otherwise, you would not be maybe possibly looking the way that you are looking maybe as a human. Then there's an issue of academic standards and expectations as well. You have to comply with certain guidelines. It also makes easier for the person who is reviewing or reading your work. Right? If the work is organized logically, then it makes it easy. I can be able to comprehend what the results, what results were obtained. What are you saying about those results? What does it mean in the context of extant literature or existing literature or other empirical findings that are emanating from existing publications? Then the issue of professionalism and credibility as well. First impression last. So if your results are not organized, or if your work is not organized, or if it's not following a proper structure, then obviously it's going to be difficult for me as a reader of your work or as a reviewer of your work to be able to navigate from one aspect of the text to the other. In other words, I will just simply get lost in the text, right? And if that happens, then that will affect even the overall score that you get, or the conclusions that the reviewer will make. So it has a very huge impact on that, right? Still, effective communication of research findings as well. When your structure is organized in the correct manner, that will lead to communication that is comprehensible regarding your research findings, highlighting the key points. In a way, you are facilitating the comprehension or the understanding of the research that you would have done. Even in terms of facilitating future research as well, because if you comply with guidelines, it's easier. It's going to be, your work can be easily reviewed, it can be comprehensible. Those also who are coming after you, remember, research is perpetual. There must be a progression of literature within the field that we are coming from, which is social science that we are talking about today. There must be progression of literature. So, but usually, if others can understand what we have done, then they are able also to take it forward. Then the issue of efficient revision and feedback process, where it actually simplify revisions and in a way lead to feedback that is organized, that is actionable, leading to an improvement in the record or in the quality of the study that you are doing, or the research that you are doing. But this is just the generic structure. So I've just put this down where we know, even in a paper, okay, look at it in the context of the study that you are doing. Because remember, like I've said, this is generic of what usually is expected, and as part of your logical progression. Let's talk about this in the context maybe of a thesis, of the studies that they are doing. It could be a thesis, it could be a research report, mini dissertation, but also is dictated by your department, that you are coming from, faculty specific guidelines, including templates. But this is what you normally find commonly across over the global academic community. Title page, plagiarism declaration, acknowledgement, summary or abstract, abbreviations, table of contents, table of figures, table of tables. That is if you have used the tables, right? So you one way or the other, these elements should be part of your study, but don't include a table of figures if you don't have the figure. So it's what you are having within the study that will dictate, but we are just capturing everything, right? That should be part of that that structure. That then you move on to the introduction. If you are even structuring the remember title page, numbering all these other pages, they are now numbering in Roman numerals. Then when you start from from introduction, then you are now using Arabic numerals until the way you finish your start. All that with it's also formatting for technical appeal of your work. So within the introduction, there's usually background, the research problem, objectives, we normally also need just to see a synopsis of the research method, if there are any contributions that your study is making in terms of the significance, then you put them there for those who are doing PhD, and the study outline, or the outline of the study in terms of how the progression, you are now navigating the reader to show the reader that, okay, this is how my study will be organized. That when I read, just by reading chapter 1, I should have a sense of what is it that you are going to do. And if I even complement that by going, after you've completed, then go to the conclusion, then I must get what you said you are going to do within the conclusion. There must be an alignment between the two. So all these parts, they are interrelated, they are interconnected. You see that when you're discussing results, you go back to the literature that you would have written. You go back to the empirical findings within the literature that you would have used, within your study, and use them to triangulate with the results that you would have got. So this just demonstrates the interconnectedness of these elements as speaking to the whole study that you are doing and guided by the topic under study. So then within the literature review, you introduce, all the other sections that come up in the introduction. You have to introduce, you put a conceptual theoretical framework, review of existing literature, and you identify gaps in knowledge. Remember that gap that you would have said, this research occupied this gap that you would have identified and to tell us about in the introduction. It has to be drawn or identified within the framework of the literature that you are reviewing. Right. This is where you find that this is what has been done. The literature has followed this direction and they've neglected this part, and me, I'm occupying this part. These are the methods that has been used, but me, I'm actually proposing a better method than all these methods. Then you propose your method. But now central to this, to the discussion that we are going to have, like I've said, is the issue of results. But before that, we have the research method or methodology, where within the research method or methodology, we have the research design, data collection, sampling procedures, data analysis, the procedure, then ethical considerations, and other aspects, including, that come or associated with the research method or methodology that you would have applied. Remember, if the research method is a good method, we should be able to understand and be able to replicate what you would have done in another context, possibly, or in another geographical location, but maybe following a similar framework that you would have followed. I think we can all for those who have engaged in publications, we can all say that, or in research in general, we are also inspired. We have sort of a paper, a guiding paper that we will be using to say, okay, I'm going to follow the method that was applied in Monera et al. And so on. Then you follow that particular procedure. So if I didn't clearly lay out the process that I've followed or the research method that I've followed, then you are not going to be able to comprehend it or to be able to replicate it and reach your own conclusions that you can maybe triangulate now with the conclusion that I made. Then we move on now to the results, which is the purpose of this the discussion we are having today. Then also the discussion section that I've included in this presentation. Then the conclusion. After concluding, you can move on to references or bibliography or appendices. Some they just use one, they can call references, then they call them bibliography as well, but without the knowledge that these are actually different things, but related. Why? Because the bibliography includes the reference list. But within the bibliography, you also include even those sources that you consulted but did not cite in your study. You include them. You also include bibliographical notes, whereas in the reference list, you only include those sources that you have cited within your text. So meaning every in-text citation must have a corresponding entry in the reference list. Right, so there's no notes that you make, and you don't cite, you don't make an entry in the reference list if you do not cite that source, right? But within all this, right, where does findings fit in a dissertation or thesis, for example, or within the frame of the research that you are doing? Just look at it in the context. If it's a paper, where does it really fit in? And within a dissertation, I'll talk specifically about maybe dissertation or thesis, for example. Where does this this fit? So okay, we can sort of position it in the structure, right? Within the structure, where do we really position results? So I think already I've shown the progression already, that we see the results now being between the methodology section and the discussion, right? So this is where we find, this is the location where we find results. We don't see the results being the one started with, or at the end before you make your after you have made concluded, then you put your results that you have obtained. No, or just after literature before the research method. So it's a progression. That's the coherence that we are talking about. It's a logical progression. It's a sequential progression where one element begins and then the other element follow. So typically, like what I've already discussed, introduction, literature review, methodology, then you find your findings or results, discussion, conclusion, or recommendations. Then you can move on now to reference list or bibliography. Then you can have your appendices, where you can put all those other supplementary materials that could not fit within the study itself, within the text of the study, but that you feel is necessary for the reader to be to refer to in understanding, what you would have done or the conclusions that you would have made, and the role of findings or the results. That is the heart of the whole study. The section, it showcases the original contribution of the research. And if we do not have findings, there's nothing that you can discuss. There's also no inferences that you can make, no conclusions that you should be making, because it's research is evidence-based, and the evidence comes in the form of the results. You said there's a problem, then prove that this is a problem, right? The logical progression or the logical presentation of analyzed data. When you analyze it, you have to organize the data clearly. Usually we use tables, we use graphs, we use teams, We use narratives, when we talk of qualitative studies, that's where mostly the issue of thematic progression or themes or narratives comes into play. And it's very important that you also avoid what are called raw data dumps, where instead you present analyzed and structured outputs. You don't just dump, just take a table, then you just put it there. There's nothing said about the table or anything. Results also provide the evidence for research questions. So in other words, they must directly answer the research questions or test the hypothesis that would have stated, proving it wrong or right, rejecting the now hypothesis or accepting the alternative hypothesis. So in other words, each result should be traceable back to a specific research objective or research question that you would have stated within your introduction, right? And the results, most importantly, they also form a foundation for the discussion. Like I've said, if you don't have results, there's nothing that you can discuss. So in other words, the results provide the factual base upon which the interpretation, comparison with existing literature or triangulation and theoretical insights are built on. So that is the foundation for the discussion. And in terms of distinguishing features, as relating maybe possibly to the findings in the discussion. I will talk about the discussion again later. You see that when we talk about the findings or results, we are saying, what does the data show? That's the point of interest. That's the focus. So it's actually objective or descriptive. What does the data show? So you stick to that. Then when you're discussing now, you're saying, what does the findings mean? That's the question that you're asking, which now becomes interpretive or analytical. Right? So we'll talk about that as well when we talk about discussion later. Then the issue of visual representation, where maybe you can have, the sort of that progression that I've been talking about, sort of a flow diagram of that progression, where you have the methodology, the findings, discussion, then you move on to conclusion, where the methodology, how that data were collected and analyzed, then you go on to present your findings, what the data is revealing, then you go on to the discussion, why the results matter. Then you link them to theory, or you link them to literature. That's the triangulation part. Then in the conclusion, now you're saying what can be drawn and applied from these results that I've presented. So let's move on now to some common structures. So you can structure your results by research questions. You can also structure by themes or categories if it's qualitative. You can structure by variable or data type if it's quantitative. You can structure by, if it's mixed methods, you can organize by method, then you can integrate. But it's so important to always know that you must align the structure with the objectives of your study. So when we talk about structuring by research questions or hypotheses, we are simply saying that each section must be organized around a specific research question or hypothesis. So you have to ensure that there's direct alignment with the study's objectives, right? Or with the hypothesis that you would have stated. And that is actually, it captures both the quantitative and qualitative studies, So all of them, both quantitative, qualitative, you must ensure that there's a direct alignment with the study objectives, and that's where the results can be presented by research questions or hypotheses. Just giving maybe as an example, let's say a research question that maybe reads, what are the challenges postgraduate students face in online learning, maybe, for example, right? That was the research question. Then you can now present findings specifically for that research question, right? So you can actually present them in terms of the research question. Not that you are asking the question, but you can find a way of framing it but linked directly to that particular question. Then, when we talk about themes and categories, this is now for qualitative, right? Qualitative, solely qualitative, where the findings are organized under emergent themes or categories. From the data analysis. Remember, you would have gone through that process, coding, and so on, until you come up with your themes. Then you come up with some sub themes and so on. But each theme now it becomes a subsection that is supported by evidence. Then also remember those escapes or quotes from the what the participants said, or observations or documents that you would have used in your data collection. Then so this, when we talk about this thematic presentation, we reflect the inductive or interpretative nature of qualitative research. So, for example, you can have maybe possibly, let's say, a theme 1, coping with uncertainty; theme 2, access to digital resources. Then you under that you can have some other sub themes that you discuss. Then include those escapes. I've seen a lot of research that has been brought to us for consultations that are done based on the thematic, the sort of thematic analysis for qualitative studies. Then, if you present by a variable or data type, that is for quantitative, now where you structure the results according to key variables or statistical analysis that you would have used, right? So mostly you move from descriptive statistics, then you move to inferential statistics. I've done this a lot in when I write papers. So that are sort of econometric based, that are more statistical. Then I follow this a presentation where I present by variables or the type of data that I would have used, or the method of analysis that I would have I've used. And for these clear tables and figures, they usually accompany the text. So, for example, you can have descriptive results, you can have inferential results. So sometimes we call them descriptive statistics. Then you talk about them. Then you can have other regression results. Then you label them as regression results. So when we talk of inferential results, we talk of t-test, correlations, regressions. When you talk of descriptive, it's issues that relates to demographics, frequency, and so on. But you can't do a study, then you just put descriptive statistics. Obviously, it doesn't really hold. It's not much of substance for you if you do that. Then within a mixed method approach, you can present the results according to methodological strands that you have followed. So first, remember, mixed method consists of quantitative findings, and also it consists of qualitative findings. So you can maybe start by reporting quantitative findings, then you move on to qualitative findings, and then integrate the results in a joint summary or sort of a synthesis. That is another way that you can do. So you can just integrate the results in a joint summary. Remember, for a mixed method study to be really in terms of the logical flow and coherence of it, you have to be able to integrate both results and to discuss the results in an integrative way that is more richer than just presenting them separately. Even if you present qualitative, but you still have to integrate so that we can try to hear how do those studies or those findings relate to each other. So you have to actually ensure that both sets of data, they retain their integrity, but also speak to each other. So that's what, in other words, that's what I'm saying. So just maybe possibly giving as an example, you can say maybe survey results on, it's a quantitative where you do a survey, then you get the results on on student stress levels, then you do also a qualitative study to interview teams that are explaining why students felt stressed. So this is where also those are type of study designing, like exploratory, sequential, and so on. Then they come into play. Like for example, you start with quantitative, but then when you see that the results are showing that student they are revealing maybe possibly that the students their stress levels are high, then you have to go on to interview the students to try to explore, to get really into the lived experiences of why the students they feel like stressed, right? Then the integration part of it, now you show now how the qualitative insights contextualize the numerical trends, right? So now integrating both the qualitative and the and the quantitative results. And like I've already mentioned, that it's always important that you align the structure of the findings chapter with your research objectives and the start design. You have to ask yourself which structure best helps yourself in the context of the start that you are doing, or which structure best helps me to answer my research questions clearly and logically. So that is very, very important. So this is the flow of the results chapter. So you need to sort of you introduce, which is a brief roadmap of what will be will be covered. Where you remind the reader of the research questions, the objectives, that are guiding the results. But you must keep it short, and just signpost the order of presentation. Like for example, this chapter presents the study's findings, beginning with descriptive results, followed by the main findings structured around the three research objectives. Then you just maybe you can refer us back to see section 1.4 in the introductory chapter. Then we can go there if you want to refer further. So you have to be as brief as possible. So usually introduction, just one paragraph to give the essence of what you are going to do within this chapter, and also linking back to the other chapters or sections that would have already passed. Then we have the descriptive results, where you present the background or contextual information about your participants, your cases, or the data set that you would have used. And this usually include the demographic breakdowns like age, gender, education, and so on, and also contextual variables, where the setting, sample characteristics, and so on are looked at, including a data overview, where you look at the response rate, if there's missing data, and how have you resolved that, and the like. So you can use tables and charts for clarity. So for this, you can present it in form of tables, and even the way that you present it. Sometimes you can also use percentages as well. For example, of the 250 respondents, 60% were female, 40% were male, with an average age of maybe 22 years or 21 years. That kind of language. Remember, the presentation of results, it also has its own language. It has its own language that we must also be sort of accustomed to, and know how to speak the language of presentation of results. That speaks to the structure, the organization, and the coherence of that whole section. So the main findings now, they are usually structured according to a framework that we have chosen, like those frameworks that I've talked about, in terms of research questions, objectives, thematic framework, that is for qualitative studies, hypothesis or variables for quantitative studies. I've already referred to that when I was in the previous slide leading to this one. Then your findings must now be sort of presented in a logical manner, in terms of the subsections, each addressing a key area, within your study. You have to focus on what the data show. not the interpretation, right? So when you interpret now, you are now sort of discussing. So focus on what the data shows. Then supporting evidence as well. You must provide evidence that substantiate the claims that they are making. In qualitative, direct quotes, escapes, field notes, they must also be part of that. In quantitative, then you have the tables, graphs, statistical outputs from whatever software that you have used for the analysis. So that forms the evidence that you have done. So I think you have seen studies where some escapes you find that there are escapes that are there where they say maybe I often felt unprepared for online classes. Then you code that, and in bracket you say maybe participant 7. So showing that what participant 7 say. But I even prepared if you put it in a form of that there's also a link, like maybe as reviewed by participant 7, then you can put the quotations. Then in terms of tables, you can have regression outputs, frequency tables, correlation matrix, and so on, within your uh, your work. So it's important that even after, at the end, you must also summarize the key findings in a manner that is concise, to sort of recap the major findings that you have obtained. And it's important that you must avoid to include now new data there or another analysis that you did not do. Right, so you must simply provide the transition into the discussion, chapter, if they are separate, where you just have to show how the results set the stage for interpretation, right? So in other words, maybe as an example, you can say these findings highlight significant challenges with access and preparedness. The next chapter discusses these findings in relation to existing literature and theoretical perspectives, maybe just as an example. So in other words, the findings chapter is it must be descriptive and evidential. Right? So it must set the stage for the discussion section, which is in nature interpretive and analytical. Right. So when you are presenting quantitative research, usually the introduction, I've already spoke about the introduction and its purpose, where you need the purpose and context of the chapter, restating the aim of the chapter and the relevance to research objectives, explaining the key analysis that will be presented. Then you move on to descriptive. It's the same thing that I've been talking about in the previous section, where you look at the overview and descriptive analysis, beginning with a summary of your data set, including sample size, demographics, and any other characteristics. You can also include tables and figures there as visuals. Then present basic statistics such as means, medians, standard deviations, range, and frequencies. They must make sense. They must make sense. Don't just say the mean is 5. So what does that mean? Explain to us what does that mean? If the mean is 5, then you should still have to make a little bit of for you to contextualize it to the data itself. What does that reveal? Maybe if the mean is fine, is 5, then for quantitative research as well, you also test the assumption. So you have to confirm that your data meet the assumptions that are required for the statistical test that you plan to use. Like maybe, for example, if you are doing a time series analysis, the requirement is that the data must not be suffering from unit root. So it must be there must be no unit root. Otherwise, the results that you obtain, they are sort of nonsensical results. So they don't make sense. So you have to check. So if the data does not meet that, then you have to see what is it that is required. If you still want to continue to use it, how do you what remedy can you use so that the data does not suffer from that? So that the data is stationary. So you take first differences, for example, until you can take second differences until the variable is now is now stationary. Then so non-stationarity is not an option. So you have to be able to know to test the data for those assumptions. Because if you violate the assumptions that are required for that statistical test, then or for that analytical method, then already your results are spurious, or nonsensical, like I've said before. So you must also discuss the test for normality, homogeneity, or variance, multicollinearity, heteroscedasticity, and the other tests that you can take as applicable. And you have to include, like I've already alluded to, any steps that you take to address violations of these assumptions. You have to fix that for you to, according to what the literature dictates, that you must do as a remedy for that, or to repair the data so that it doesn't suffer from those sort of elements, or from those assumptions, or violate the assumptions. Then for quantitative as well, you move on to inferential statistics, where this is where you do hypothesis testing. Now you have to state your hypothesis, clearly state each hypothesis, the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis, right? So the null hypothesis, sometimes they call it the hypothesis of no difference. So you have to state it. Then you also move on to statistical analysis, where you detail the statistical method used to test each hypothesis. For example, t-test, ANOVA test, regression analysis, chi-square test, and so on. Then you must now present the findings of each test. So you include the statistics like test statistics, those t-values, f-values, degrees of freedom, p-values, and effect sizes as well. So you use tables and figures where appropriate to illustrate significant findings. Sometimes also, even remember, it's findings that are insignificant. They might also be important for your research. So it's not only that you can only present those ones that are significant. So if those ones that are insignificant are also important for your result, for the result of the study, then you have to talk about them as well. But they cannot enter, if you are fitting a model, then they cannot enter into the model if the relationship is insignificant. Then still on quantitative, you also include any additional analysis that you would have done. And here we are talking about that beyond the primary hypothesis that we would have stated. You must also report any secondary or exploratory analysis that you would have conducted, right? So we are saying the intention of this study was not to do this, but you end up doing it. And as an example, we are talking of additional correlations that you would do, subgroup analysis, and other tests that you undertake, after you have run your analysis, or after you've run your regression, then you other tests that you do. So you in a way, this offers transparency in clarifying whether the analysis were planned, as in pre-registered, or emerged during data exploration. So there are certain things that will need to be done, because of when you are now exploring, getting sense of the data, then you see that this test need to be done. So you must also be transparent to clarify whether the analysis were planned or not. So in a way, the purpose of the additional analysis is for you to uncover patterns that are not initially hypothesized, and also provide richer insights that may guide future research. Then it's important as well for quantitative research to have a summary of the findings. So the synthesis of results, it will provide a concise narrative summary of the key findings, avoiding relisting statistics. So in this part now, you must focus on the story the numbers are telling, right? So you have to focus on the story the numbers are telling. So maybe part of the language, for example, you can say maybe overall the analysis show that academic stress is significantly related to exam performance, particularly among younger students. So that is what when you are trying to synthesize, to provide sort of a narrative summary of the key findings of the study, and clarity as well. When, especially when you have group findings, you have when you have your findings, you have to also like group them logically. Yeah, like we have said, by research question, by variable, by theme, those strategies that I've or methods that I've already presented, and you have to highlight both significant and significant results. So you must show that these ones are significant. I normally use stars to do that. So maybe 3 stars, it says it's significant at 5% level. When it's okay, three stars, it's 1% level. 2 stars, 5%. 1 star, 10% level of significance. So the significance is becoming weaker as the stars are also diminish sort of. Then in terms of the use of visual aids, so it's important to ensure that the tables and figures, they are clear and correctly formatted. So those you can figure captions, or the table captions, the units, the labels, in terms of y-axis, x-axis. If there are any notes that you need to add, then you will put the notes. So you must also be consistent with the style across the whole chapter or across the whole dissertation. So use the same type of table that I use. I continue just be consistent using the same type and presenting in the same manner. So the for the tables, figures, the best practice would be that they should provide detailed statistics. For example, regressions, coefficient, means, and the figures must show patterns or trends. So you can use bar graphs, scatter plots, but each visual should be introduced in the text and followed by an interpretation. So you must, as seen in figure 1, then you talk about it. Then also, you don't have to replicate what you have said on the figure. Then you replicate it again in the text. As you can see in figure 1, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you can write it, then why are you providing a table for that or a figure for that? So it's important that you there's also clarity over complexity. So you have to put clarity, in front, at the forefront, over the issue of complexity. So you have, in other words, you must avoid overcrowded visuals and keep them readable and professional. If it's not clear, then why are you even including it? Because the reviewer won't be able to see it. Then for qualitative research, introduction, purpose and context of the chapter, restating the aim, explaining the key analysis that will be presented, organizing the results, thematic analysis, already discussed, highlight and comment on the themes that emerge from the analysis. Then you also have narrative description, where detailed and coherent story or account that describes the themes, patterns and experiences, and experiences are identified in the data. Then in terms of presentation of the results, you have to introduce to still introduce the theme, what it encompasses, and the relevance of that theme to the research question. Then you provide evidence and examples. So those escapes, so you have to present the evidence that supports each theme. So that will be direct quotes from the participants, observations, or other qualitative data. You can also use visual aids as well for qualitative data, where tables, charts, diagrams, and concepts map can actually be used. So but you must also consider using the visual aids to help present the findings more effectively and for them to be more comprehensible. Like for concept map, they summarize the data or illustrate the relationship between the teams. So you have seen that, where you're just mapping the relationships amongst the teams. Then you, with qualitative research as well, you must deal with the discrepant cases, where we have negative cases or or outliers. So you have to address any negative cases or outliers or data that do not fit neatly into the themes. So you have to also discuss the cases and strengthen your analysis by showing that you considered the full range of the data and did not selectively report the results that you would have obtained. So integration and synthesis will follow, where you synthesize the findings across different themes or categories, provide brief summary of the key findings of the chapter, and emphasizing the main insights and how they relate to your research question. Right. So this is for mixed methods. Remember, mixed method is a mixture of quantitative and qualitative. Then that will give us the mixed method approach. So what we're saying for quantitative, then what we said for qualitative, a fusion of that, then it's the one that relates to the mixed method, right? So with also one important aspect being to be able to synthesize the two, quantitative and the qualitative element of your results. These are some tips and guidelines that I can offer in terms of structuring. You must have a standard approach, present, describe the results in a systematic and detailed manner. So the issue of coherence, the issue of logical flow, it is actually very, very important. And for the quantitative, the result chapter, it's likely to consist of tables and figures. I've spoke much about that. So the writers comment on the significant data. They must be shown in the tables and figures. Don't just take the output as it appears from statistical software, then you just paste it there. So you also have to edit your figures, your tables, as speaking to what you are doing and the presentation that you are also doing. In many cases, the reviewers, they get sort of bored if they just see that they are just copying and pasting. You just copy and paste your results as they appear in the outputs that you have obtained from the software. So you must format it according to the style that you are using for your paper or for your thesis or for your dissertation, is also dictated by the font style that you are following, as well as other technical elements that you will be following within your work. There must be some kind of uniformity as well when you are undertaking these kind of exercises, or when you are presenting results. Then the presentation also, it often takes the form of location or summary statements, identifying tables or figure indicating its contents, highlighting statements or which point out and describe the relevant or significant data as well. So within the tables, you also have to so this is also what you normally see as well within the result chapter. So this must also be done on the tables. Like I said myself, if I show a significant and insignificant, I use those stars to reflect that the level of significance. If it's not significant, then I just don't put any star. Still on the tips and guidelines, for quantitative, all figures and tables should be numbered and given a title, interpreted with reference to the text. Do not repeat same information presented in the table. I've spoke about that. As you can see on the table, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. When I go to the table, there's just 1, 2, 3, 4. So why are you not just putting it in text that the results showed that there's 1, 2, 3, 4? So don't put a table because you want more page count. You just want to fill up the spaces. And following the numbers rule, less than 10, you can write it in words, and it's more than 10, then you can just write maybe using the figures, the way that it appears there. Then if it's but you can also use percentage versus percentage of a symbol versus percent of writing. But be consistent. If you choose to use percentage of the symbol, then continue using percentage of the symbol. Don't just be switching, transitioning from one to the next. Then for qualitative, it's thematic analysis, highlighting and commenting on the themes that describe the patterns, experiences, and that are also identified in the data. So it's important that it must be a coherent story or account that describes the themes. And those themes, remember, they are linked to your objectives or to the questions that you were asking. They must also be describe the patterns, the experiences that were identified within the data. The quotes and escapes. It's important that direct quotations from participants are provided that illustrate the key points or themes. So you don't have to just be, because I've seen some others now, their results section will become 80 pages. Why? Because they are reproducing what the participants were saying. So these escapes as well, they must be used very, very minimally and where necessary. You don't have to be that everything, it must be having escapes. And so at the end, they just present what the respondents said. That is not a presentation of results. So when you are presenting qualitative results, it often involves the conveying of findings of non-numeric data. So we are talking of like interviews, observations, open-ended survey responses, but that has to be done in a clear and meaningful way. So we have already talked about some methods that can be used for presenting qualitative results, like thematic analysis, for instance. And we also have other forms of qualitative analysis as well that involves case study, detailed study of a single smaller number of cases as well. So which also falls under the qualitative research design. Okay, these are the expected requirements. Now when we talk about the issue of discussion, because remember I said structuring the results and also structuring the discussion, those are sort of aspects that are interrelated, because with the results follows the discussion, and the results forms the foundation for those discussion. But what is it that you do when you are in the results section? What is it that you do when you are in the discussion chapter or the discussion section? So this is the expected requirements for the discussion. First, that's where you now interpret the results. In other words, this is where you now explore the meaning and implication of the findings. Linking them to the research questions and objectives, showing how those findings provide answers to the questions, and lead us to achieving the objectives of the study. It's also important that you connect or you link with the theoretical or conceptual framework, so which sort of grounds the results in the lens that has been guiding you, in terms of the theoretical lens or the conceptual lens that has been guiding you. So it's important that you compare with existing literature. That's triangulation. So you have to highlight areas of agreements, gaps, contradictions. If there's divergences, show them where they agree, where they don't agree, where you are surprised. Also allowed to say, I'm surprised that I found this, but in this geographical location they found that. So you are allowed to do that. You are now making sense of the results. You are not just stating what you got, but you are now making sense of the results. So then there's also when we talk about the tools for interpretation that you can use. So that's where you can also use some of these strategies that can make your results to be meaningful, to make sense. Pattern recognition, where you identify recurring trends, relationships, or themes. You triangulate. I've been talking about triangulation a lot, where you cross-check findings across different data sources or methods. You also remember you can triangulate the methods that have been used. You also triangulate the results that have been obtained, right? Especially following those studies that have used a similar analysis like the one that similar a methodology like the one that you would have used. So triangulation is important in terms of both the method as well as empirical findings. Then contextualization is also very important, where you situate the results within the broader social, cultural, or policies. That is something that is also very, very important. Remember, numbers on their own, they are meaningless. So you have to put context to them. You have to position them within the broader social, cultural, and political context. And then it's important also for you to engage in a critical reflection, where you acknowledge limitations, any biases, that you would have had as data. Remember, sometimes you go to collect the data that you also become immersed in that collection, that data collection, where you also end up, even because if maybe the participants are sharing a very disturbing experience, you end up maybe being also emotionally disturbed, and hence that could introduce some biasness as the researcher. So you also have to discuss such, and within the method as the research design as well. You have to talk about such, and how are you going to also ensure that you as far as possible, how are you going to deal with that and ensure that the results or the data that you collected lead to results that are credible. Then if you can see that it's all this is actually very, very important tools for interpretation, both pattern recognition, triangulation, contextualization, as well as a critical reflection. So in a way, we are talking about shifting from descriptive reporting to a critical analysis, which is a very, very important skill in postgraduate research endeavors or research writing. Then the comparison with existing studies is very important. I've talked about that. You must situate your findings in relation to previous research. You have to show whether your results, they conform, they extend, they contradict earlier studies. You identify gaps that your study is feeding as well. So it's within the triangulation that way. If say there's a gap, then show us that gap as well in the triangle. You now have the results. Then show us that this was the gap. Then it's also it's for you to when you triangulate with literature, it actually strengthens the credibility by cross-checking your findings against established theories or studies, right? So in a way, you are highlighting how your research fits into the broader academic conversation, or to the discourse that will be maybe taking place, or arguments or debates that are sort of contemporary or taking place at that moment. Then it's important to use citations to back the interpretations and demonstrate the quality of the research that you have done, or the results that you have presented, or the discussions that you are making. So in terms of limitations, you have to acknowledge the weaknesses, like for example, the sample size, the scope, the methods, the data quality, and other concerns that would have sort of resulted in not in the progression that would have sort of envisioned when you started the presentation. It could even include other financial constraints as well. Then you have to discuss how the limitations may affect the validity or the generalizability of the results, and you have to be very transparent, but you must avoid undermining the overall value of the work that you are doing. So that is very, very important. Once you point out weaknesses, okay, if you know that really the work is weak, then there's also no need for you to hide that. But if you believe that your studies of your results are substantial, are of a substance, then you don't have to sort of you know undermine the overall value of all the work that you would have done. So that must be also be done in a manner that is transparent, but avoiding undermining the overall value of the work that you have done. So in terms of implications, so when you do discussion, that's where you just could first do the sort of a discussion of the results, making sense of the results, triangulating and so on. Then you move on to the limitations of the study. Then you also move on to the implications, where you can have theoretical implications that relates to the contribution to knowledge, models or frameworks, and practical implications, where which are sort of relevant for police, practice, or communities. So the research must improve the life of the people, isn't it? It must address existing societal concerns. If it doesn't do that, then it shouldn't be done, because it's for us to better our lives, to sort of make it easier for us to do certain processes and so on. So it must address an existing societal problem. Hence, practical implications must also be offered. Then you also need future research implications, where you must suggest areas where further studies are also needed. So that comes from the triangulation that you'll be doing. That also comes from when you have from emanating from the limitations that you had when you were sort of kind of performing, when you were performing this when you're performing the study. In other words, we are saying that the research is perpetual. It must increase. You must be worried if the research is ending by you. You see, so you will build on to existing research. There's progression. As new techniques are found, as new methods are found, new ways that impact on quality are found, then there must be a natural progression. So it must be a norm that in your study that you're doing, you must offer recommendations of what future research can do, or avenues that can be followed in terms of our future research. So all these elements, they just form the core of the discussion section, and we talked of comparison, triangulation, limitations, and implications within the within the um, within the discussion within the discussion segment. It's also important that you maintain a balanced tone. Just as some tips and guidelines, you maintain a balanced tone. You do not have to overstate significance of findings or making sweeping generalizations. I've talked about that. Be write in a clear, concise, and organized manner. Check for consistency. Ensure that your discussion is consistent with your research questions, hypotheses, and results. It's important for you to revise and refine. You must refine arguments and improve clarity. Right? Then this is just a synopsis of the presentation of results versus discussion. What is it that you are supposed to do? The aspects that are focused on within the presentation of results. What you want to do. You want to objectively report your findings without any interpretation. So that is the purpose. So you have to focus on what was found, right? You also your tone should be descriptive or factual. So you must use neutral, factual, concise tone. That includes phrases like the data showed, table 3 indicates. When you are talking of quantitative, you also talk about the mean, the percentages, regression outputs, statistical tests, and for qualitative, you need verbatim quotes, coded themes, narrative summaries. So in terms of the style, then the issue of so you can use direct outputs, the tables, codes, graphs, questions that are answered in the presentation of results is what does the data show? So you must stick to that, right? So the okay, so you can, so maybe as an example, out of 250 respondents, 65% reported experiencing high stress during examinations, while 20% reported moderate stress. So they're just mentioning, they're just telling us what the results are showing. Then within the discussion of the results, the main focus will be on to interpret and make sense of the findings in relation to the research questions, literature, and theory, right? So we are saying what the findings mean, right? So interpretive, critical tone, that's the tone you must use. Then you have to integrate with theory, past studies, and implications. And the questions that you're answering is why does it matter? How does it relate to existing knowledge? So you are explaining why the results look the way they do. And you compare with previous studies, looking at areas of agreements, contradictions, divergences, trends, and so on. Then you also link the findings to conceptual or theoretical framework. You also highlight implications, significance, and limitations of the study. You can use if you are analytical, interpretive, and critical. You can use phrases like these findings suggest, in line with Smith 2019, the results indicate this. Then your style must be analytical. It must also be interpretive, and it must be critical. Just looking at that example that I've been referring to of stress, you can say maybe, for example, the high stress levels among students may be attributed to inadequate coping mechanisms and academic pressures. Similar findings were reported by Brown 2020, suggesting a broader trend across universities. Such kind of languages. But the key difference is within this the aspect presentation of results, the discussion of results. So we have talked about the issue of focus. So in terms of what was found, what the findings mean, the tone, descriptive, factual, interpretive, critical. The issue of data use as well. Then the questions that are answered, as in what does data show for presentation of results, and why does it matter? How does it relate to existing findings when you are now discussing the results? So so many. If you look at it, just maybe bringing some practicality into it, in many theses or dissertations or articles, these sections are separated. I've already mentioned them. There are some articles where they do separate, some they don't. Some you can just present together in one section, but some they do separate. And so where you have two sections: the results section or the results chapter, and the discussion section or chapter. And like I've said, some they combine, right? Especially in social sciences, they do combine into a single results and discussion section to avoid repetition, especially when you are dealing with qualitative research. Then these are just some strategic guidelines, so it's important that you maintain a neutral tone. So these are just some writing style for findings and interpretation. So a neutral tone, an objective tone. So you have to avoid loaded words like surprisingly, obviously. Sometimes we do that, because sometimes we're also surprised as well. So if you are surprised, then you can, but these are sort of loaded words already, So then you have to stick to the facts, the data show, rather than it is clear that, so we also do that as well. It is clear that, it is apparent that, So you have to use active voice for clarity. Table 3 shows that 45% of respondents agreed. So it's easier to read than when you say it was shown in table 3 that. So table 3 shows that, so you use active voice. The focus must be on the doer of the action. So there should also be no speculation in results chapter, you see. So as an example of a wrong approach, you can say maybe this finding might be due to poor teaching methods. So we don't want speculation. I've seen quite a number of this kind of writing. So you have to be specific. 45% of the participants reported difficulties with teaching methods. So you don't have to say it might be due to poor teaching methods. So be precise, be concise. So like I've already mentioned, that part of why it belongs to the discussion section, and the what is for the result, what was found. There should be logical sequencing where you move from descriptive, then main results, evidence, then you have to summarize, provide a synopsis of the main findings. And in all this, you must use signposting. So like first we examine demographics, then next we tend to research question one, and then you progressing like that. So in other words, there must be balanced detail. You must provide enough evidence to also to support your claims, but you have to avoid overwhelming readers with repetitive data as well. So where it's necessary, then you also have to provide evidence for the claims that you'll be making. So these are just some common mistakes that one has to sort of avoid. You have to avoid what is called dumping raw data. So presenting raw data without any analysis. So as an example, you are just listing every interview transcript instead of synthesizing themes, always condensing and highlighting the key findings. So you are just restating what you found in the interview transcript. It's not making sense or applying your mind as how does it link in terms of all the themes that would have emerged and so on. Then we have the issue of overgeneralization from that are coming from small samples. So you claim that all students struggle when the sample is very small or it's localized. Like I've been saying, you only went to one part of Soweto, then you say it's true for the whole country, right? Then you also have to use cautious language. Many participants reported, or within this sample, so such kind of language. You should not ignore contradictions. So you don't have to cherry pick. If some evidence challenges the claims that they are making, you have to acknowledge them and also explain the possible reasons why that could be so. Then blurring the results and discussion, you shouldn't also do that. Like maybe, for example, let's say the results are showing that 50% of respondents, they indicated that they have time pressure. Then you, in the discussion now, you say this aligns with Smith 2019. We also find time pressure to be a significant stressor, right? So you are sort of blurring the results of the discussion. You are not being specific as to what was also found from Smith. They are now saying all the results they are actually aligned with what Smith done, but yet they are referring to 50% only within the context of your study that you are doing. Then issue of excessive visuals without narratives. So every table or graph, it needs an interpretation in the text. As shown in figure 2, state levels peak during exams with 65% reporting high stress. So you are showing maybe it's a graph. It's coming from, you are drawing it from a graph. Then the issue of poor organization as well. You like jumping between topics, it confuses the reader. So or the review of your work. So you have to always structure findings around the research questions, the themes, or the variables, so that there is a logical progression or a sequence or coherence in the way that the results have been presented. So these are just some best practices where it's important to align with research questions objectives, use visuals strategically, tables for detailed states, figures or charts for patterns and trends, quotes to give voice to participants, where you can maybe just as a golden rule, you provide one key message per visual. So don't provide multiple messages just emanating from one visual. Then you must report both expected and unexpected results. Where expected ones are confirming the hypothesis, unexpected results are they just adds to the originality and may open new avenues for research. So these are other secondary findings that you would have obtained. And maintaining transparency in analysis, where you in quantitative, for instance, you can state the test, the p-values, the effect sizes. Then in qualitative, you can show coding steps, you can provide representative codes to just maintain, so that you can show that your claims that you are making are valid, and we can rely on the results or the conclusions that would have met. Then to summarize each section as well, end with a short recaps. Like in summary, most students reported stress linked to exams. This finding is explored further in the discussion. This sort of acts as a bridge to the next discussion as well. So when you summarize, then you link to the next session. So you must write with the reader in mind. Clear subheadings, avoid jargon unless necessary, and also if you use it, then you have to define it and keep consistent with the use of terminologies. With this, now I'm arriving at my concluding remarks, where I emphasize that writing is a process. It's not an event. You have to plan. So your results, you have to plan for them. The way you're presenting them, you have to plan for them. At the end, there must be a logical progression of the findings, is linked also to your objectives and the topic of that you are studying, or the topic at the end. Then you must follow prescribed writing conventions as well. They are sort of like that generic structure that I presented. So those are sort of prescribed writing conventions, where we know that the results they must be come after the research method and before you make any conclusions. Then you have to choose a clear structure for organizing your findings and interpreting your findings. That's where you make meaning in relation to questions, theory, and literature. Then when you are interpreting, you make sense of those findings. So the interpretations are done in the discussion section, and in the findings, just stick to what is it that you found. Then if you have a well-structured results chapter, that will enhance the clarity, accuracy, and the academic contribution that you are making. And with that, this brings me to some of the references that I've just used when I was making this presentation. We will share these presentation slides and the recording with you, and you can also be able to refer to these sources if you need to maybe possibly read further, and other sources that you can find useful, when you talk about this issue of presentation of results. And with this, I'm now handing over back to Mr. Lawrence Asani, who is moderating this session, to now usher us into the open discussion segment. Thank you.
Thank you so much to you, Dr. Gabriel, and thank you so much to all the participants for engaging in today's workshop on organizing and interpreting findings in the social sciences. We have all seen that research is not only about the data that we gather, but it also about how we tell a story from all the data that we have gathered. So in that regard, we would like now to bring it to the open discussion section. So if you do have any question or any pending questions that you have, you can please kindly raise them with Dr. Gabriel, and you'll be able to address your question. You can raise your virtual hand or you can type the question in the chat box. So I have allowed everyone's mic. So if you do have any questions, please kindly raise your hand or you can contribute in the chat box as well. Dr. Gabriel, there is sort of like a comment and a question in the chat box by Jennifer, who says that this is very helpful. Thank you so much. Hope next time we can have a training using a specific paper. It might be easier to relate.
Okay.
Yeah, sort of like a comment from Jennifer.
No,
Yes.
I take note of that, Jennifer. I think thank you. That is very sort of an important contribution, or a comment that you just made. Yeah. So in future we'll also try to incorporate, maybe some examples of existing papers so that you can see this. But all these elements that I've discussed, if you just take any academic paper, maybe like from especially published ones, you will see these elements. You will be able to see these elements. So this is also just a presentation that you can also use as a benchmark for your research that you are doing, to just measure it against all these elements that I've been discussing here. So these are elements that I follow these things myself. I have a number of papers that I've also written where I follow similar frameworks and make use of this. All these elements I've been discussing in the conversation that I've had with you. So it will be really, indeed, it will be it's very useful. You can use it as a yardstick for the study you're doing, but we also in future then we will incorporate some existing so sort of a real life some publications within existing literature that demonstrates or shows these elements that we were talking about.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying further on that question. Yes, Vicky, we will be sharing this presentation together with the workshop recording on our model communities. So we will be sharing this. And then there's another question from Angela, which says, thank you so much for the very insightful presentation. I'm currently working on my data presentation. After this workshop, I have a lot of revisions to make. So yeah, definitely. So thank you so much for that, Dr. Gabriel. I think you have really contributed to the knowledge of Angela there. So I think she will definitely go and amend a thing or two on her paper. Then we have another question from Moyo, who says, thank you, Doc. How do we apply theoretical frameworks?
You say, how do we apply theoretical? Okay, so within the context of the discussion that we're having today, which is specifically the results section, we're now saying that when you are discussing your results, that's where you now also sort of triangulate it with other theoretical aspects that you would have sort of included within your theoretical framework. So normally what I do, when I'm writing, let's say it's a paper, when I'm writing it, when I specify my hypotheses, I specify them within the context of theoretical literature already. So remember, our the questions that we ask, the hypotheses that we pose. Remember, when you say hypothesis, this is what we are thinking, is the nature of the relationship, or what we are thinking could be the nature or an avenue that lead us to the truth. So usually for quantitative research, where we use it in quantitative research for looking at the existing, whether there's an existence of a relationship between maybe two two variables or two or more variables, or between the independent and independent variables. So in a way, that is done. We do it based on what the literature is saying. Like, for example, if we say there is a positive relationship between price and supply, right? It's just an example. Economic theory says that, isn't it? The higher the price, the higher the supply, and the lower the price, the higher the demand, which is a negative relationship. The higher the price, the lower the demand. So it's a sort of an inverse relationship. So that is what theory says. So when you are specifying, let's say you want to look at whether you have two variables, the price and the quantity supplied, and you want to so from literature we know that the relationship is positive. So when you specify your relationship, you are saying there's a positive relationship or there's no relationship between these two. So that is what you are specifying your hypothesis in the context of what the literature is saying. So that is what we were talking about here. So when you're now triangulating, as well with literature to say, okay, I've found that there's a positive relationship, but also the theoretical literature also shows that there is a positive relationship between the price that is charged and the quantity that is supplied. So that is what we are talking about here. So we are saying frame your results in the context of the theoretical lens that is that your study is hinged on, or that your study is grounded on, in terms of what those theories are saying.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel, for emphasizing further on the question. I can see a thumbs up there from Soshule. I think she she's answered there. Thank you. Then there's another question from Nomusa. It says, great presentation. I just want to check how I can thematize my results, or how do I pick the themes from the findings, or should I use the objectives as usual?
Okay, let me just open it myself and okay, it says, all right. I just want to check how I can thematize my results, or how do I pick the themes from the findings, or should I use the objectives as usual? So it just okay. Remember, the themes emerge from if this is a purely qualitative study, then they emerge from the themes, from the coding that you would have done. So it's an outcome of the coding process, where you end up with the themes. That the themes should be identified from the coding process. So it's a progression from coding, then maybe possibly you record, following, further categorizing and grouping until you reach to those codes. Remember, themes are like codes of codes, so you are recoding the code to arrive at particular themes and sub-themes. So which are now, maybe you started with 100 codes, so you end up now, you have further grouping those codes until you reach maybe possibly maybe 3 themes with sub-themes that are emerging under that, which would have been an outcome of further groupings that you did to arrive at those themes. And also, but some studies, they have already, maybe possibly they are working on themes that were already drawn from literature, right? But either way, you have there is a way in which you obtain those themes, either from your results, or you are working on the themes that you have already identified from the literature. Then you are now checking your results, in the context of those, presenting them in the context of those themes. But you still have to do this coding process as well, so that at least you can be able to group, to identify which results should be categorized into the themes, into those themes that you are having. So which means you still have to code, do a natural progression that will lead you to categorizing the results into these specific themes that you would have discovered. So So in a way, in answering your question, you do not pick the themes from the findings, right? You do not pick the themes from the findings themselves. But remember, the theme rather are part of the findings, because due to the analysis that you were doing, the coding process that you were doing in analyzing your data, then you have to it will lead you into these themes. So which forms the findings of the study. Then you present your findings following a thematic sort of progression or thematic presentation. So that's all I can say. For quantitative, then you can also use objectives. Even for qualitative, you can use objectives as well, as relating to the maybe to each objective. Then you can present maybe themes that are under that particular objectives, and so on, or the results that are under that particular objective, even if it's also a quantitative one.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel. I see a thumbs up as well from No Musa there. There is another question from Jennifer. I don't know if you want me to read it from my side or you can see it from your side, Doc.
I can see it from here. It says the other issue I've found is that it's like every journal has a specific way of writing. How then do I write a paper that can fit various journal styles, or do I have to keep modifying as needed? But in terms of presentation of results, they don't really. I haven't really seen it from my experience. I haven't really seen a difference in terms of the way the results are presented. It's only that maybe some can prescribe that you have a discussion section, but most journals that I've submitted to, they just follow sort of an open style in terms of structure, a generic structure, until maybe if they have sort of when they review your work, or if some they tell you that you must include this, or your paper must include 1, 2, 3, 4, or it must at least include these elements. So it's up to you also to decide what will come in maybe in terms of subsections and so on. That is up to you. But that generic presentation, introduction, it must have a title, abstract, a title, author and affiliations, abstract, keywords, introduction, literature review, research method. Within the research method, maybe you have to decide, maybe you want to talk about the data first, you want to talk about the model specification, then you talk about maybe the analytical method that you are going to follow, analytical process, then you go on to the results that you have found out of that. Then sometimes you within the results you do results and discussion. I've done that a lot, results and discussion, then I do both within one section. Or you can maybe split the two. I've also split it without the journal telling me, and they have a discussion section, and I've never had a sort of a problem. So it also happens that the journals can have its own specifications that you have to follow. But most journals also accept an open style until they maybe accept your paper, or maybe when they have accepted it, they can tell you that maybe you can structure it in this way, or when they see that there's a potential that they can publish the paper, then they will tell you that you can now use it, put it on their according to their policy and other guidelines. So you can write a paper that fit all. You can follow this generic structure, use a generic structure for that. Then you can modify it as the need arises, and also check journals that accept sort of an open, a freestyle kind of submissions. Then when do I write a separate introduction and literature review? When do I write, and when do I incorporate the literature review into the introduction when I'm writing for publication? That is done. Okay, journals, they differ as well. Some they want you to actually have a literature review section, and in social sciences, it's a very, very huge inclination towards that you must have a literature review section. It also depends on journals as well, depends on reviewers as well. I've seen that all old school reviewers, they want to see a theory. If there's no theory, they might not, your work can even be rejected simply because there's no theory. I have had papers that were returned back because there's no theory, rejected because there's no theory. I didn't provide a theory. But there are some journals that focus on what is it that you are finding yourself. So we have reviewers who are inclined towards that. I'm more interested in what you are saying rather than what has been found. Though I'm also interested in your integration of what you have found in the context of what is already existing. But I'm one of those people who subscribe to that. So I don't really focus on what others have found. So and so have found this in China. So and so have found this in Japan, and so did this in Africa. No. But I'm interested in what are you finding. Have you followed the due processes for you to arrive at the conclusions that you are making, and what does that mean in the context of what is already existing? Okay, so it's important for you to do that. So there are journals that can allow you to do that. If you feel like you want to do it, submit, they will tell you. But it also risks rejection sometimes if it falls in the hands of those who feel that you have missed certain elements. But I've seen a lot of papers that do that. And also it's linked to your authority within the field as well. We can't expect people like Stiglitz, for example, in economics, for them to be writing literature review. Those are authorities. They already know. Because remember, we want you to demonstrate whether do you have an understanding of what is going within the field. Do you know what is going? Do you know the status? What is going on? What is the status of the existing research within the field? So we don't have confidence in you. Let me just put it like that. For you to sort of exonerate you, or to sort of maybe for you not to be writing literature review. You must write literature review because we are not yet well established within the field. Let me put it like that. I hope you are well answered, Jennifer, on that. Okay. Lawrence.
Nah, perfect.
I think we have already surpassed the time, and
yes.
I don't know if there's any other questions that I must address before we go. I'm still open to maybe taking the questions if they are there. If there are no questions, then we can move on to with your indication and with the indication of the participants, and we can move on to closing the session.
There isn't any further questions at this point, Doc. Just people saying that the session was enjoyable and saying that the session was very insightful, and everybody just thanking you for such a very insightful presentation.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yes. So I think that's it from for the questions.
I appreciate it. Even some regular faces like Dion. I see Dion there. There's quite a number of other people.
Yeah, there is
and other people that we know who are always supporting us from one session to another. And we are really happy of your support, and we hope we support each other. You support us, we are supporting you as well. So that kind of collaboration, that's what also leads to sort of it enhances the quality of the outputs that we produce as an institution. And thank you guys for that.
Thank you so much to all the participants for always taking part, in our workshop. And also, as Dr. Gabriel say, we're always helping each other. You come in, you gain, a few things that you incorporate into your research. Just Jennifer saying thank you for supporting us greatly. We appreciate. So thank you so much to all the participants. Just a reminder that I have shared the feedback survey as well. So please kindly incorporate all these comments within the feedback survey for our facilitator, Dr. Gabriel. And also just to note that we also generate a certificate of attendance for these workshops using this feedback survey. So we kindly ask you to please fill it in and also use it for our reporting purposes. So with that regard, thank you so much to all the participants. for taking your time to join us for today's session. We really, really appreciate your presence. And thank you so much to you, Dr. Gabriel, for such an insightful presentation. And with that being said, we'll now be ending the session unless if there is anything.
Please don't close. I want to ask something to Dr. Gabriel Ne.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm listening.
You did postpone that SPSS workshop, ne?
Yes.
And I asked for you guys to send me the materials, and I haven't received anything so that I can finalize my. Remember, I was attending, and I need to finalize my write-ups and stuff.
Okay, and also to do the activities that that Dr. Kudzai asked us to do. So I'm going to do that today. So I will take all the from level 1 until all the sessions we did. Then I will also give you the links to the recordings for that, so that you can practice then and reshare the resources as well.
Yes, so thank you. That would be very helpful.
Okay, no, thank you. I've received quite a number of requests. I've promised that I will do that, and I will do it today.
Okay, and when are we getting our attendance certificates? We need
the attendance certificates is after the November session. It's for completing the whole sessions.
All right.
Yeah.
But we would have submitted, Mustina.
When are you submitting?
Now, October.
Okay. So it's okay. So
but we will attend either way.
Okay, so that will be fine. You know, I think you still need a well run. It's just unfortunate that the sessions had to be postponed, but I actually thought, we'll try to see, what is it that we can do from our side, But okay, thank you for that. We'll resolve with that as well.
All right, thank you so much, and have a lovely day further.
All right, so I think all of you. Okay, if you don't receive them, but I know if you were receiving communications from me previously, especially during the level 2, then you should be be able to receive those resources today.
No problem.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Okay, thank you so much again, Dr. Gabriel. Thank you to all the participants. In that regard, I will now be ending the session, and enjoy the rest of your day further. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye to the participants.